crime story.
How did Mark Winger almost get away with murdering his wife? In 1995, Mark and Donna Winger appeared to be living a charmed life. Mark, a nuclear technician, and Donna, a hospital employee, had enjoyed several blissful years of marriage and had recently welcomed a precious newborn baby girl named Bailey into their family. However, just 3 months later, the tranquility of Springfield was shattered by the shocking news of Donna's savage murder. The community was left in awe of Mark's courageous act in defending his wife against her deranged assailant, ultimately taking the killer's life. For over 3 years, the authorities accepted Mark's account of events until a series of new developments emerged, compelling investigators to re-examine the case with a fresh perspective. Murder under strange circumstances. In August 1995, Donna Winger, accompanied by her baby daughter Bailey, made a trip to Florida to visit her family. After a few days, they returned to the St. Louis airport and arranged for a cab driven by Roger Harrington to take them on the 2-hour journey back to their Springfield home. Donna, an attractive woman, couldn't help but notice Harrington's inappropriate advances and lewd suggestions during the ride. She tried her best to ignore his remarks and laughed them off. Upon arriving home, Donna wasted no time and immediately contacted the cab service to report Harrington's behavior, accusing him of nearly harassing her. As a result, Harrington's employment was suspended without any formal proceedings. On the same day, Donna confided in her husband Mark about the disturbing incident. Mark displayed a great deal of empathy, even urging Donna to file an official complaint and consider legal action. Unbeknownst to Donna, her husband had already concocted a cunning plan, and the fate of the young mother was already sealed. Just a few days later, Mark extended an invitation to Harrington, possibly under the guise of reconciliation and assistance in regaining his employment. Roger noted down Mark's address on a scrap of paper and drove his car to the Wingers' residence on August 29, 1995. Carrying a thermos filled with coffee and a pack of cigarettes, Harrington entered the living room, but before he could take more than a couple of steps, a series of gunshots rang out, and he collapsed. Mark Winger proceeded to reposition Roger's lifeless body beside Donna, strategically placing a hammer in Harrington's hand, and then immediately dialed 911. In his call to the dispatcher, Mark claimed that he had shot the man responsible for his wife's death. When the police swiftly arrived at the scene, he recounted a fabricated story to the officers, asserting that he had been in the basement, exercising on a treadmill, when he heard a commotion upstairs. According to Mark, he cautiously ascended the stairs, his gun at the ready, and upon entering the kitchen, he discovered Harrington wielding a hammer in a menacing manner toward Donna. In a desperate attempt to shield his wife from harm, he fired 2 shots at Roger. Curiously, when the officers began examining the victims, both Donna and Harrington still exhibited faint signs of life. When they informed Mark of this unexpected development, he reacted in an unusual manner, sitting down on the couch and rocking back and forth, seemingly unresponsive to any verbal communication. At the time, law enforcement attributed his behavior to shock, with the true nature of his fear becoming apparent only years later. Steve Weinhoft, a former assistant prosecutor in Sangamon County, later recalled, Donna clung to life with remarkable determination, despite forensic evidence revealing at least 7 hammer strikes to her head. Her chances of survival were less than 1%. Tragically, both victims succumbed to their injuries shortly thereafter, as their condition was incompatible with life. Based on Donna's prior conflict with Harrington and Mark's version of events, the police swiftly closed the case within days, officially naming Roger Harrington as the perpetrator. It appeared that Mark Winger had managed to evade justice. New life. Mark Winger found himself thrust into the role of a single father, shouldering the responsibility of raising his young daughter. In a bid to support the young widower, Donna's family made an attempt to visit him, seeking to provide their assistance. However, their reception was far from warm. Mark promptly showed them the door, insisting that he would hire a nanny to assist with childcare. Come January 1996, Mark crossed paths with a 23-year-old named Rebecca Simic, who was actively seeking a nanny position. It struck me that Bailey really needed the nurturing presence of a woman after everything she'd been through. Simic later recounted to WHAS 11. Rebecca established a strong rapport with Bailey, and even Donna's family, who made occasional visits, acknowledged her as a godsend to Mark. Despite the lingering unease of being in a house where 2 tragic murders had occurred, Rebecca remained resolute in her mission to envelop Bailey in care and warmth. Mark exerted considerable effort to help Rebecca acclimate to her new role. Their bond deepened over the course of a few months, to the point where the nanny made the life-altering decision to move into the Winger household. Several months down the line, Rebecca found herself pregnant. Unable to fully shake the discomfort tied to the house's grim history, she broached the subject of them relocating. And Mark readily agreed, eager to distance himself from his late wife's persistent relatives. In a surprising turn of events, in October 1996, just 14 months after Donna's tragic passing, the couple embarked on a spontaneous vacation to Hawaii and tied the knot. I recall once asking him how he managed to move forward so swiftly. Simic reminisced. His response was, "When you have a good person by your side, it's much easier to embrace a fresh start." Upon their return from Hawaii, Mark made the decision to sell the house where Donna had tragically passed away, relocating with his new wife to the suburban outskirts of Springfield. Year after year, they welcomed 3 more children into their family. In addition to Bailey, whom Rebecca lovingly nurtured as her own daughter, they were now a family of 6. Despite the occasional pandemonium arising from their growing brood, their life appeared nearly idyllic. Mark proved to be an affectionate husband and an exemplary father. However, their harmonious existence would soon undergo a significant transformation. Confessions of a former lover. In early 1999, Mark's health took a turn for the worse, prompting Rebecca to rush him to the hospital, the very same hospital where his late wife had worked prior to her tragic demise. During their hospital visit, an unexpected encounter occurred. They crossed paths with Diane Schultz, who had been Donna's best friend and colleague. Diane's reaction was palpably emotional, and she appeared on the verge of tears upon seeing Mark and Rebecca together. This reaction did not escape Rebecca's notice, as it harkened back to a time when Schultz had made somewhat unsettling visits to the Winger household, leaving Rebecca with the impression that she might be vying for the role of Mark's wife, attempting to fill the void left by Donna. Once they returned home, Rebecca couldn't help but question her husband about the encounter, but Mark skillfully managed to deflect the issue. However, Mark was no fool and recognized that he had committed a grave error by exposing himself to Diane while Rebecca was present. Schultz harbored a hidden secret that, if unveiled, had the potential to upend his life. As it turned out, Mark's intuition was well-founded. In February 1999, Schultz decided to go to the police with a revelation that sent shockwaves through their lives. She disclosed that she and Mark had been engaged in an affair long before Donna's tragic death. At one point during their illicit relationship, Mark had inadvertently hinted that life would be more straightforward if Donna were no longer in the picture. Diane also divulged that Mark had displayed a peculiar and unusually focused demeanor right after Donna's ill-fated journey with Roger Harrington, a marked departure from his usual demeanor. Initially, Schultz had dismissed Mark's discussions regarding Donna's demise as non-serious. However, once her closest friend was tragically found dead, her suspicions immediately veered towards him as the likely culprit. When Diane confronted Mark about her suspicions, he resorted to threats and intimidation, warning her that if she didn't cease her inquiries, he would ensure a fate similar to Donna's awaited her. With her best friend now gone, Schultz found herself bereft of anyone to confide in regarding her mounting fears. Furthermore, Schultz disclosed that the weight of her guilt had tormented her to the extent that she had made several suicide attempts. Seeing Mark at the hospital, accompanied by his caring wife, was the tipping point that compelled her to break her silence, realizing that she could no longer bear the burden of her knowledge. A new investigation. Upon hearing Schultz's account, the police decided to re-examine the evidence discovered at the scene with meticulous scrutiny. The deeper they delved into the once closed case, the more perplexing questions arose. Why was there no indication of forced entry into the Winger residence on that fateful August day? What was the reason for Roger Harrington bringing coffee and cigarettes if his intention was to harm Donna? And why would the assailant opt for the Winger's hammer as the murder weapon when he possessed a tire iron and a knife in his own car? However, the ultimate piece of incriminating evidence against Mark came to light through a collection of photographs, either overlooked or forgotten. The positioning of the bodies in these photographs unequivocally contradicted Mark's version of events. Mark Winger asserted that Roger Harrington was kneeling beside Donna Winger's head, clutching a hammer, elucidated Assistant Prosecutor Weinhoft. He claimed that after the shot was fired, Harrington fell backward, with his feet remaining near Donna's head. However, the photographs revealed the exact opposite, a conclusion supported by blood spatter experts. Officer Cox, who had been involved in the 1996 investigation, expressed his remorse to ABC. "I felt deep shame over the initial investigation's handling. I had unjustly impacted Roger Harrington's family by wrongly condemning him in absentia. I mean, he was an innocent victim." On August 23, 2001, Mark Winger was formally charged with the murders of Donna Winger and Roger Harrington. Upon hearing Schultz's account, the police decided to re-examine the evidence discovered at the scene with meticulous scrutiny. The deeper they delved into the once closed case, the more perplexing questions arose. Why was there no indication of forced entry into the Winger residence on that fateful August day? What was the reason for Roger Harrington bringing coffee and cigarettes if his intention was to harm Donna? And why would the assailant opt for the Winger's hammer as the murder weapon when he possessed a tire iron and a knife in his own car? However, the ultimate piece of incriminating evidence against Mark came to light through a collection of photographs, either overlooked or forgotten. The positioning of the bodies in these photographs unequivocally contradicted Mark's version of events. Mark Winger asserted that Roger Harrington was kneeling beside Donna Winger's head, clutching a hammer, elucidated Assistant Prosecutor Weinhoft. He claimed that after the shot was fired, Harrington fell backward, with his feet remaining near Donna's head. However, the photographs revealed the exact opposite, a conclusion supported by blood spatter experts. Officer Cox, who had been involved in the 1996 investigation, expressed his remorse to ABC. "I felt deep shame over the initial investigation's handling. I had unjustly impacted Roger Harrington's family by wrongly condemning him in absentia. I mean, he was an innocent victim." On August 23, 2001, Mark Winger was formally charged with the murders of Donna Winger and Roger Harrington. I hope you liked this story. Please don't forget to leave a comment sharing with your thoughts below. Give a thumbs up this video. And remember to hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for more captivating stories. Thank you for joining us on this remarkable journey, and we'll see you in the next video.